Are you curious about what's happening in the Cincinnati real estate market right now? Well, in this video, we're going to discuss everything that's going on in Hamilton County, Butler County, Clermont County, and Warren County, and then we're going to gloss over all of those together. We're going to be talking real stats like absorption rate, how many active homes are on the market, how many have sold, and are we in a buyer's market or a seller's market? And make sure you stay tuned till the end because I'm going to be talking about the expected decision that the Federal Reserve is making next month. There's been talks about them possibly cutting the Fed rate, and so I want to talk about that and what that could mean for mortgage rates here in the near future. Really quick, my name is Evan. I'm a local Cincinnati realtor, and I get calls and texts from people just like you every single day who are looking to make a move here in Cincinnati and the surrounding areas. So if you're thinking about making a move, or if you just have questions after seeing this video, please reach out. I have my contact information on the screen, or you can use the link in the description. Feel free to shoot a call, text, email, or you can even book a call, whatever you prefer. Like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about 4 of the counties in Ohio. Now, when you think of Cincinnati, you're thinking of Hamilton County. So Hamilton County is going to be where places like Cincinnati are located and some of its suburbs. You have places like Blue Ash and Marymount and Loveland and places like that. And keep in mind, all of these stats are from July, so last month. That's usually the MLS or the Realtor Alliance of Greater Cincinnati pulls the stats from the month prior, and then we get them at the beginning of that next month. So I'll have another video out for August sometime in September, but again, these stats are all from July. In Hamilton County in July, there were 1,638 active homes, 855 sold. And so what we can do with those numbers is we can use them to get a couple of things: the absorption rate and the monthly supply of inventory, or MSI. And so briefly, I will explain, they're kind of inversely correlated, so I won't talk about them too much. What absorption rate is taking the amount of homes that's sold in a given time period. Usually I will do longer time periods, like a lot of people will do a whole year, or you can do 3 months or 6 months, but because we're talking about July and what's happening right now, we're just using 1 month. So we're going to take that 855 homes sold, and typically you divide that by the amount of months of the time frame you're looking for. In this case, we're only doing 1 month, so 855 divided by 1 is 855, and we're going to divide that by the amount of active homes that were active in July. So once we do that, we get a number that is, it's going to come out to a decimal point, but obviously you can just multiply it by 100 to get a percentage, and we get 52% absorption rate. All that absorption rate means is that about 52% of the homes that were on market were absorbed by buyers or bought by buyers, right? And then the way to get the monthly supply of inventory is just the opposite of the calculation we just did. So we take the number of actives and we divide it by the number of solds, and we get a number that is pretty close to 2. And so what that means is that if no more homes hit the market and we just have the ones that are on market right now, it would take roughly 2 months to sell out of all the inventory in Hamilton County at the current rate that they're selling. So what does this mean? Well, typically for absorption rate, anything between 15 to 20% is a pretty balanced market. Now that does depend on the area, but 15 to 20% is pretty balanced. Once you start getting below 15%, it's definitely a buyer's market, and anything above 20, even 25% is going to be a seller's market. So at 52%, we are definitely very much so in a seller's market still. All right, next up we have Butler County. So when you think of Butler County, you can think of places like Hamilton, Fairfield, Westchester, Liberty Township. Those are some big areas inside of Butler County. So in the month of July in Butler County, we had 528 active homes, 384 sold, and so that's going to give us an absorption rate of 72%. And then the MSI, or the monthly supply of inventory, it would take about 1 3/4 months for inventory to sell out. So again, just like Hamilton County, Butler County is very much still in a seller's market. As you can see, 72% absorption rate is very high. So really there's just not a ton of inventory, and the inventory that is there is getting bought up quick. That's going to lead to, in a lot of cases, a increase in the price of homes, as there's a lot of demand but just not a lot of inventory. And so a lot of times you're going to see buyers in a bidding war, sellers getting multiple offers, especially if the home is priced right and marketed right. A lot of times they're going to get multiple offers within just a couple of days, and they'll kind of have their choice of which offer they want to take. All right, next up we have Clermont County. So some popular areas in Clermont County include Milford and Miami Township. In July, there were 358 active homes in Clermont County, and 222 of those sold. That gives us an absorption rate of 62%, and it would take just over a month and a half for the current inventory to sell out. One interesting note about Clermont County, though, is the inventory is up, but also the sold units are down compared to this time last year. And so this could possibly be signaling a turn towards a buyer's market, kind of the opposite of what we were just talking about with Butler County. The inventory is going up, which is great for buyers, but homes aren't necessarily selling. There's not as many homes selling. So this could mean that we are gearing up for a turn towards the buyer's market. There's a lot of other factors that play into that, though, and even if this is the case, we would need to see that trend continue for at least another few months before we'd really be in a buyer's market. So Clermont County, still a seller's market as of now. All right, and last up we have Warren County. So when you think of Warren County, you can think of places like Mason, South Lebanon, Deerfield Township, places like that. In July, in Warren County, there were 453 active homes, 256 sold homes, and so that gives us an absorption rate of 56%. And it would take roughly a month and a quarter, or 1 3/4 of a month, 3/4, for inventory to sell out. So again, continuing the trend of all the counties, very much we are in a seller's market across the board in the Cincinnati area. All right, so we've talked about each county really quick. Now I kind of want to talk about, what does this mean for the future of the market? Are we going to stay in a buyer's market? Are we going to stay in a seller's market? Are we ever going to turn to a buyer's market? So I want to talk about that. Overall, we're still in a seller's market, and until we see inventory come up consistently over months and months, that's going to stay the same. Now, one reason that we are possibly seeing inventory remain at pretty low levels is inflation. And so I mentioned at the beginning of the video that I was going to talk about the upcoming Fed decision. The Federal Reserve is making a decision on if they will possibly cut the Fed rate. And so I want to talk about that because I think a lot of times people hear that and they immediately assume that mortgage rates are going to go down. And so I want to explain, I'm not going to get super in depth in it because I'm not sure that that's something that any viewer here is interested in, but I want to explain this in an easy to understand way. The Fed, for a while now, really since last September, has signaled that they could be cutting the Federal Reserve rate by 0.5. Now, it's becoming more and more likely that it's not going to be that big of a cut. A lot of analysts are thinking that there could possibly be no cut at all, or even just a small cut like 0.25. And I want to be clear that that's not necessarily going to affect mortgage rates. If the Fed does cut rates, it's going to affect things like credit card interest rates, auto loans, home equity line of credits, but mortgage rates are not directly tied to the federal rate. What the federal rate is the amount that banks charge each other for overnight loans. So there's a lot of like back and forth going on with the banks, right? And they're charging this bank at current rate is 4.5, so they're charging them 4.5% to loan them money. So if that gets cut a little bit, then you will see immediate results in the things I mentioned, like auto loans and credit cards and things like that. Mortgage rates, however, are directly tied to the 10-year treasury yield. So this is where I start using like bigger words and it can get confusing. So this is like a simple way. I'm going to try to explain as simple as I can. Oftentimes when this happens, investors are looking to move their money into safer investments because it signals that, hey, maybe the economy is not doing super well and they're unsure. So because of that uncertainty, they a lot of times will move their money into bonds. And then because of that, bond yields will go down, which could in turn lead to lower mortgage rates. I know that was a lot of bigger words. I'm going to have an example here that I think will make it easier to understand, but I need to explain one more small thing. At the end of the day, cutting mortgage rates is not as simple as the Fed just making a decision. Mortgage rates depend on inflation, investor demand, and overall economic outlook. So the bottom line is, if the Fed decides to cut rates, then short-term borrowing costs are going to go down immediately. Mortgage rates could fall afterwards if the bond markets end up responding positively, but that's not guaranteed. In fact, sometimes rates can see a small temporary increase after a Fed cut, just because the market is kind of worried about the inflation impact that those cuts could have later down the line. So to quickly recap, yes, in Cincinnati right now, we are in a seller's market. And will mortgage rates go down anytime soon? That is to be determined. I personally think, and keep in mind, there are a lot of people out there who are better at this and more informed than me. But I personally think we will probably see like a quarter of a percentage cut. So to go down from 4.5 to 4.25, I think we will see that happen just to kind of stimulate the economy a little bit and hopefully bring some inflation down. The danger in that, obviously, is you don't want to cut the rate too much. So I think they're going to play it cautious. And so I'm not sure that we're going to see mortgage rates come down much, at least for the rest of this year. Now 2026 is a different story. I think the Fed will wait to see how the market responds, and lenders are going to do the same. And so I think if we're going to see rates fall much lower than what we have right now at around 6.7 to 7%, depending on where you are, I think getting any lower than that is going to have to wait for 2026. Of course, I can always be wrong, and so don't take everything that I said with just 100% it's going to happen. If you're thinking about buying or selling in Cincinnati, one thing that I hear quite a bit is people are waiting for rates to go down. They want the mortgage rates to go down, and they have been waiting for that for a couple of years now, and then they're going to buy. One thing to keep in mind, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad strategy, but if the rates go down, keep in mind there's a lot of people out there who are probably doing the same thing. There's never going to be a perfect time to buy a home, right? Unless you're just sitting on a pot of gold and we have this huge housing crash, and you can just buy things up for really cheap. But I wouldn't count on that. So if you're thinking about making a move and you're like, I don't know if now's the right time, I don't know if there will ever be a perfect time, but if you have questions and you want to talk about if you should wait or if you should buy now and what that looks like, please reach out to me. I'd love to discuss it with you. I'm not in the market of telling you, you got to buy a house right now and now's the perfect time. I will be brutally honest with you and tell you how I feel. I know that buying a home is a big decision, and I'm never going to be one to rush someone into that just to make some money. I take it very seriously. I hope you enjoyed this video. If there's a video that you've been hoping I would make, or you just have questions on a topic and you're like, hey, can you make a video on this? I would love to do that. I would love to do that for you. Just comment below and let me know. And again, my information will be in the description if you would like to reach out to me for any questions or to start your home selling or buying journey. Thanks.